listen to it. My name's Anne Marie Warwick. I am with Warwick Realty Group. I was actually with Communities Foundation of Texas for 7 years, and that's how I got involved in Freedom Day. But I'm still a member of the Freedom Day steering team. I told them when I left Communities Foundation they were not going to be able to get rid of me that easily, and I was going to continue to circle around the organization as much as I could. So it is my pleasure to welcome you today to Freedom Day 2020 and to the hashtag Stop One workshop. Today is CFT's 19th annual Freedom Day. I cannot believe it's been 19 years. Throughout the day today, CFT for B members, their member companies, CFT staff, fund holders, veterans, and active duty military will be working together to support a wonderful group of nonprofit partners and the people that they serve. We gather each year on the National Day of Service and Remembrance to honor the lives lost and forever changed by the tragic terror attacks of 9/11/2001, by serving together to do something good for our community. Thank you for being a part of Freedom Day 2020. Please feel free to take pictures of our screens and anything that you're working on. Post them, tag CFT for Business on social media. We have 3 hashtags we're using today. We have Freedom Day 2020 hashtag, CFT4B, and that's CFT the number 4B, and a Be in Good Company hashtag. So please tag us in all of those. We would love to see your pictures and hear about your experience. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Charlene and Domingo. I'm not sure who's taking it first to lead us through our workshop.
So good morning. My name is Domingo Rodriguez.
That's okay.
But I just wanted to say thank you for being here and say welcome. Charlene and I have been working together recently on a lot of different Zooms, so hopefully we will have everything set up correctly for you. I'd like to, at this time, to introduce Charlene Johns, your instructor, and your head instructor, I should say, and take it away, Charlene.
All right, and we're on time because I have this timed out. My name is Charlene Johns. I'm the program director at the Dallas Veteran Resource Center for the Stop One Suicide Education and Prevention Program. Thank you for participating in this special session for suicide prevention. September is the National Suicide Prevention Month. Yesterday was National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day. So the S word is a documentary illuminating different aspects of suicide. So we're not going to show you the whole documentary. We encourage everybody to watch it. Stop One has the license to show it in educational format, so we can view it online for anyone that's interested. We're going to show 3 clips from this documentary to engage the community in a conversation about a word most people are not comfortable saying, and that's the word suicide. So Domingo's going to address some of housekeeping issues.
So yes, we are going, since we do have a time limit on this, we do need to make sure that we respect everyone's time and everyone's ability to hear. So if you are not muted at this time, please mute yourself, or we will be trying to mute you at the time that we can. Also, if you begin to feel, we will be talking about different things that will affect some people emotionally. If you begin to feel yourself becoming triggered, so to speak, please take some time, think about what you need to do, take care of yourself. Also, if you need to, you can always dial 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-TALK. Have someone to talk to, or you can also private message one of us and let us know that something is happening, and we'll make sure that someone gets in touch with you as quickly as possible. If nothing else, we'll go ahead and begin.
Okay, I'm just about to, or Domingo, I added the agenda to the chat box. If Domingo or I can add the 2 other handouts. So we're going to add these handouts. The agenda has space for you to take notes. Second, we have the know the signs of suicide. So you can download that from our website, but you can also have this handy, and please share it with as many people as possible. And third is the North Texas resources handout on mental health. So there's lots of resources that are available in the North Texas area that you might not have known, especially the disaster distress line. So we really want to encourage everybody to download these handouts, to take them and to use them in the community and get that done. Please be sure to share and visit the stop1.info website. There's lots of information on the website. There's virtual trainings. There are a variety of resources connected to the pandemic, as well as trainings that we've been recording throughout this interesting time in our history to make sure that everyone in the community has access to suicide prevention and suicide prevention education, where you know the signs. Recently, at the start of the pandemic, the Center for Disease Control, I've been quoting the statistic wrong, and I had to go back. They estimated that yearly the suicides range around 44,000 in the United States. They're estimating that because of the pandemic and the unique situation of the pandemic, that that number will increase by 75,000. So that's over 100,000 deaths by suicide and alcohol and drug use increase. So that's a really catastrophic number in the mental health community. So do your part. Be educated, and be aware of what's going on in the subject of mental health. So generally, suicide prevention, like most things, is dealt with when there is a crisis, so otherwise known as downstream. We're trying to take this conversation upstream by learning ways to prevent suicide before people get to that edge. And that starts with connection. And are you ready to get started? So first up, we are going to see a clip on peer-to-peer. So don't underestimate, hang on, Domingo, just one second. Don't underestimate your role in preventing suicide. So this first clip is on peer support. And what is that? It's one-on-one help through practical or emotional support. And that's not the fluffy and fuzzy stuff, but that's hard neuroscience. We're hardwired to bond with others, and isolation has proven to be deadly. The predominant factors that lead to suicide are pain, hopelessness, lack of connection, and feeling like a burden. So our goal here is to up the hope just a bit, down the pain just a bit, and feeling connected is critical today and for the long run. Let's watch the video.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you, Charlene, and also shout out to Sajal. We say your name incorrectly, but say thank you for inviting us and letting us have this time here.
We have to get a little like in the muck of it with people. I get messages all the time. They're like, my friend is telling me they want to kill themselves. What do I do? So it's just like, okay, I've been through this. What you do is you listen. They need to know that somebody is there and willing to sit with them while they're snotty and sobbing and hurting. It's not easy, and it's exhausting, and it's scary, and it is all of those things, but that can save lives. I've had friends who said they were suicidal, and what is the first thing I'm thinking? I'm like, oh my God. As someone who's like attempted and survived, I'm like, oh, we have to stop this. I have to save you. And then it's like, slow down. What would you have wanted? Not this. You wouldn't have wanted this. You know, just that shared recognition that sucks. That is so healing for people. Why do we not have in every community a group of people that meet regularly who struggle with suicide and try to help each other? fear.
So here was one of my takeaways from the video. The shared recognition that this, whatever this sucks, is so healing for people. And so the ability for people to come together and just share that that moment of you're not by yourself. And the question was asked, why do we not have in every community people who struggle with suicide meeting together regularly and trying to help each other? Well, veteran communities do have regular peer groups. Domingo Rodriguez, Military Veteran Peer Network, Dallas County. But there's this fear factor. And we want to say, gosh, I can see that you're struggling, but man, I just really don't want to go there. I don't want to have to carry this responsibility. Somebody else will probably talk to them. They're probably going to be okay. And so often we're afraid that we're going to screw it up, so we just don't say anything. But give the conversation a chance. Actively listen, and then remember to take care of yourself. You can offer to call one of the resource lines together for guidance. And for this, you don't have to be a mental health professional. Peer-to-peer is about you and me, and it starts with empathy. When we speak up, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Others will be vulnerable too. People do want to talk about this stuff. It's just tough to start the conversation. And that can be especially true if you've had suicidal thoughts. Trying to say that, I've been thinking about suicide. But try the other side of it. Are you thinking about suicide? Because talking about it can be so healing if you just give it a chance. That is the essence of peer support. Use your own lived experience to help others. And if you haven't had the experience, don't fake it. But start in a place that's open and kind. And if you have had the experience of suicidal thoughts, it's okay to bring it into the discussion. But just don't take over other people's experience and ask, can I share my own? The statistics show that people who are directly impacted by suicide become 40% more likely to choose suicide themselves. It's a contagion effect. So within some demographics, the number of people that you know that have died by suicide might be 1 or 2. But in the veteran community, the numbers are staggering. I remember hearing one veteran share, 27 of my friends have died by suicide. So we also want to applaud Dak Prescott for coming out yesterday at a press conference. It was National Suicide Awareness Day, and it was the first time that he had shared that his brother died by suicide back in April. So you see, suicide touches all demographics, all ages, all races, all people that are struggling. It's an illness just like cancer might be in your family genetics, or heart disease. Those things need to be brought up into the open and spoken about without shame.
And I just want to, kind of hit more on what Charlene was saying about being able to speak about suicide, being able to talk about it, being able to ask that question. The more that it is spoken about, because it is the S word. You're not supposed to talk about that. You're not supposed to mention that. You might give them an idea. You might, trigger something. You might do something. Essentially, if it's not out there and it's not spoken about, then it does become this taboo. It does become this word that is not to be spoken, especially during times of trouble. But when someone's contemplating suicide, that's all they're thinking about at that point. So it may be important to talk about it. It is important to acknowledge what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and allow them to to come to grips with it and see it as a true thing that is happening, that does happen, and that they can, it isn't just them. There are others who face this and have made it through, and they can make it through. I hear all the time that, oh, that person's that person's just looking for attention. That person's just looking for attention, or they're just seeking attention. Well, it's not necessarily that they're seeking attention. Well, yes, they are. Why? Because they need attention at that point. They are a person in need of attention. So they're looking for help and they're seeking it. Why would there be a problem with that? Anybody have anything they want to add in the chat or say?
I just want to say, you know, I don't remember ever a time in my life where of suicide not being a factor. I mean, from growing up from a little girl, from school, from having teachers who completed suicide, to even, you know, classmates, fellow members of our church community. I mean, it's been from childhood, but it seems like to me that over the past few years, are we really coming out and having a conversation around it? And I think dispelling some of the myths, and I think just the unknown, because it becomes so taboo that people don't want to talk about it because they don't understand it and they don't feel like they have the right words. So I like opportunities like this to feel comfortable enough to know that sometimes it's not about the right words, it's at least acknowledging that you've noticed that maybe something's not, you know, someone's not well, and acknowledging them in that moment, and giving them the space to be able to come forth and talk about what it is that they may be feeling or experiencing.
And I'd like to add on there and say that some of it doesn't always have to be your friends. It can be someone that you have never even talked to before, that you've never even, if you feel like there's something going on, there's something in you, especially with those of us that are here. Most of us are empathetic people, and in the jobs that we do, we do utilize that a lot. So we tend to pick up more than others, and that may, if we feel like something's wrong with someone, we need to speak up. We need to say something, and we need to ensure that they are receiving the attention that they are needing at that moment. Thank you, Drea. Brandy, did you have something?
So
No, I didn't at this time. I was taking a screenshot.
Okay.
So one of the things that kind of you know, really resonated with me, Charlene and Mingo, both of y'all, is saying is, you know, you need to say something, and I think that there is always that, you know, what do I say and what do I not say, you know, that you're worried about triggering them. And then also I think that it's really common for us, as you're talking to anybody about anything, that you want to build that bridge. Oh yes, I've had this experience. So for me especially, it's really important for me to, you know, actively listen. Don't usurp the whole process, you know, say I'm here and I'm listening. And if that's all that it takes, you know, like somebody who's bereaved, you don't want to say, oh, it'll get better and, you know, they're in a better place and that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that just saying, like you said, Domingo, is, you know, hey, is everything okay? You know, you seem down to me. Is there anything I can do to help? Those are all non-committal things. And when they say, you know, well, I'm feeling this, and regardless of what you think or how trivial that you think somebody's, you know, what's the straw that broke the camel's back for them may seem trivial to you, but to them it's a life-threatening thing. And just like you said, is to be empathetic and say, wow, that sucks. That sucks for you. I'm sorry that's happened to you. And then my thing is, because I'm a fixer, a problem solver, I'm like, well, let's do this, let's do that, and that's not maybe appropriate. Would you agree with that, you experts?
Well, I mean, I'm a default believer in love covers a multitude of sins, and if you are, I mean, number one, people know that you know, that suicide and mental illness is an uncomfortable thing to speak about. It's kind of like talking about female problems, when there's a male present. Nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to hear the details of, your situation. But just having that person sit with you and acknowledge that that difficulty is really, really critical, because again, the statistics and data, this is pre-pandemic stuff, have shown that isolation kills people, and that being cut off from the community, especially those that have issues with mental health, or maybe, a given scenario, like for Dak Prescott, this his brother's suicide came right at the beginning of the isolation and the shutdown of during the pandemic. So that, I'm sure because of his bravery to come out and use his platform to say, I struggled, to say I had depression, I sought help, and getting that help, knowing how to say to somebody, I'm not the expert, but I can get you to an expert, and never hesitate to get the suicide hotline on the line, because and during this time, the disaster distress line, which we'll give the number out in a minute, those have been activated, so you can also call that number during this time. And if it is a suicidal crisis, you can they do kick it up and elevate it to a suicide hotline person. But yeah, I think minimizing would be the only thing that I would say is the wrong thing, is to be like, oh, come on, aren't you over that already? He left you months ago. He was a dog. I mean, that is not helpful. But really just kind of sitting and sharing with somebody, and just when you can say, I am saying this to you because I care about you, and my goal is to keep you safe, and my goal is for my goal here today is for you to be safe, and for us to get beyond this, for us to get you some appropriate next step.
And Maggie, I'll just go ahead and say this real quick and then move on to the next one so we can stay on a time frame. But everyone's different. So, for some, they may need that, they may be asking for and needing that help, to come up with ideas. Sometimes they're just looking for someone to listen to. And it may be just as simple as, wanting to know that other people know that they exist. So it's all dependent upon that person, on what their need. A lot of times, if you just listen to them, you'll hear exactly what they're asking you for. If they're asking for that advice, if they're asking for this, sometimes all they want to do is have someone that'll listen to them. So the main thing I'll tell you is just make sure that you're not making it about you. Everything has to be about them at that moment, because that is the most important thing that they're needing at that moment. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks. Yes, very much.
And we'll move on to the next.
Yeah, and thanks, Ty, for saying that, providing that person a safe place to talk, and that is holding that space sacred. When you're able to say the word suicide, they know that you're not afraid. So this takes us to our next topic that we are going to look at in this short video. It's about seeking help.
Some people dismiss suicide as attention-getting behavior. If someone attempts and does not die, it's not uncommon to hear a lot of people saying, oh, they were just trying to get attention. They didn't really want to die. But the reality is, if someone needs attention, if they are so desperate and in so much pain and they can't think of any other solution than to attempt suicide, they need attention. Attempts are a sign that someone is not healthy and that they don't have good coping mechanisms and that they need help. And so to shame them, it may not be the healthiest way to ask, but it is a cry for help.
with every suicide attempt, the risk of ultimately dying by suicide goes up. So we need to take those events really seriously. We need to open the door to the conversation about what is hurting.
There are still people out there that do not feel comfortable going into the University Counseling Center. I have countless friends that would be having issues and I try to say, have you ever considered going to therapy? And they'd be like, oh no, my parents forced me into therapy when I was a kid because I was gay, and they didn't think that, they wanted to correct me.
When I was a sophomore, AU probably has 7,000 undergrad, and there were 1,000 students in the counseling center.
I always felt the counselors were pretty understanding and things like that.
Yeah, I think that the counselors can get demonized because they're so limited. Like they've done their research, they've done their studies, they understand, and they're doing the best they can, but they can't go beyond what the parameters they're given by the university. So it really does come down to administration.
Have gotten awards and stuff like that for erasing the stigma and all that. We're not the ones that need to get the awards. It's the people out there that actually talk about it, that do it, that should get the awards. Who did you tell today, honey, that that you were feeling suicidal? You should get an award for that.
So let's talk about that seeking help. So I'd like you to take a moment to put this number in your phone. If you're participating by phone, you can write it down. This is the crisis line. It's 800-273-8255. When you call that number, the first prompt asks if you are a veteran, or if you're calling about a veteran, you would press 1. And by doing that, the crisis line is set up to work in partnership with the VA. And so the VA is notified that a veteran is in suicidal crisis. And then they have 24 hours, I think, to respond. This is on top of, this is a follow-up call. So please write that number down, 800-273-8255. And as I said earlier, to make note of the National Disaster Distress Helpline. That number is 800-985-5990. Anyone at any time can call these two numbers. The crisis line can be called by friends or loved ones who don't know the next step. Like, let's say you're out with a friend and your friend expresses some, like, oh, this is it, I'm just going to end it all. And then, you don't have an opportunity to interface and engage on that point just because it might not be appropriate or for whatever reason. You can go get in your car and call the helpline and say, what is the next step? What do I need to do for this person? So don't ever hesitate to make a call. You have to at least give them that opportunity to interface and give you more things that you can say. And the disaster distress line, it's activated when a national disaster like a tornado or a hurricane comes. The government funds this helpline. So that's for people that are just like feeling overly anxious because of the current situation or trauma. And this certainly is a current situation that we're in with the pandemic. So they did enact that helpline. Those people are trained and equipped to tell you the up-to-date resources that are available, oftentimes at no charge in the community for mental health and mental health assistance. So please make note of those. Numbers. I do like Mariette Hartley, the actress at the end. She is a suicide loss survivor, so someone in her family died by suicide. And that's why she was saying, she gets a lot. She is often recognized. And I think that this morning when I was watching the news, the sports commentators were commenting and saying that Dak Prescott had gotten a lot of flack for speaking out about depression and about specifically about him seeking help, and that the resources need to be in the community. So this is a topic that Texas has been very low, unfortunately, in funding mental health assistance, and mental health assistance, especially in times like this, is critical, that it's available in the community. So in the handouts, we included the sheet of warning signs to look for. So familiarize with those things. And like Domingo said, trust your gut, because what to ask, if any part of you thinks you should be asking about suicide, then you need to talk about suicide. And don't let your thoughts be met with an S word like stigma or silence or shame. Just the other day, my son called me, and his daughter, who's 10 years old, her cousin, who's 10 years old, has started talking about suicide with his parents. And so my son was asking me, and I was like, he's like, well, should I say anything to her? And I said, yes, because when you start talking about it without having this shame, from a standpoint of shame, like, oh, they're talking about suicide, then it becomes a more normal thing, like a kid would go to their parents and tell them they're having a stomach ache. There's no shame attached to that. I mean, or there certainly shouldn't be. So do know the warning signs, familiarize yourself with that, and start those conversations. Compassion is less like, oh, look on the bright side, and it's more like, it sounds like things are not great right now. Can you tell me about that? What's going on? And listen. So a quote from one of the mental health professionals associated with the documentary is this, that it's not that it's not happening, it's just we're not talking about it. In the moment that person is not feeling alone, they're already safer than they were before they asked. So let's take this conversation deeper. And you're asking, are you thinking about suicide? Because by being direct, it will help the person know you're comfortable with having the conversation. And we really encourage and stress that people should use the word suicide, not hurting yourself. Because of course, when you're talking to younger people, there is a whole, cutting culture where they're just cutting themselves. They're not trying to kill themselves, but they are trying to inflict pain on themselves. So be very direct by saying, are you thinking about suicide? Then the next question is, do you have a plan? And we're more worried about someone who's thought it through and taken steps towards making an attempt. Depending on their plan, you can help them by keeping them safe away from lethal means. And the next thing is, why are you having these thoughts, and when did it start? So the root of the problem is pain. The thoughts of suicide are the effect. And so what we can do is to try to better understand their pain in order to connect with them and give them hope that it will get better without being flippant or minimizing by saying, oh, yeah, that'll pass. It'll get better. We'll all be all right. So we do want to, really engage on a personal level with people. So Domingo, give us some pure thoughts.
I want to go back to Maggie's comment about, powerful thought. Who did you tell today? That is a huge one that doesn't really come out to us. We really don't say that often. We really don't think that, and in terms of someone who has suicidal ideations, they're not really thinking that way either. So sometimes it is up to us to recognize what is going on, or even if we're not sure and we have that gut feeling that something's not right, ask that question. Kind of be prepared, afterward, because so many people are scared to ask that question because what if they say yes? What if this happens? What do I do then? I'm not trained. I can't do this. And a lot of times it's all about just being there for another person. For me, it's happened several times. The one that really, really hits me is the one I was at a job fair, waiting in line at a job fair. And, I was at a table kind of just sitting there hanging out with the MVPN guys, we're all volunteers. I wasn't getting paid for this yet, and I looked up, I saw this woman, and we were talking about different things, Navy corpsman. And for whatever reason, while I was talking to her, I just all of a sudden stopped and I looked at her and I said, "Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about killing yourself?" And just everything stopped cold. She looked at me and then she looked down and started crying and said, "How did you know? How did you know this was going to happen? How did you know that this is what I wanted to do?" So I kept talking to her and I said, "Come on back here." And we went to the back area and just started talking, found a little spot right there in the middle of thousands of people, just talking about different things. I knew that if I needed to, I could get on the chat line with her to call for that help. But sometimes all it takes is just providing that someone who listened to what's going on. She was having issues continuing on with what she was doing and not able to talk to her husband because she thought her husband was, thinking that she was being slacking, so to speak. I can't think of another word for that, but she thought her husband wasn't supporting her. She couldn't talk to her kids. And she was jobless, so she felt like she was a drag to her family. And it was just talking to her and finally getting to that point to where when we started talking, we started coming up with a plan for a safety plan for her. And it was, "Well, where are you talking to me now?" "Well, I'm in bed." After a while, I got her phone number, or I gave her my number. She called me, and every time she would call me, I would say, "Where are you?" "Well, I'm at home." "Well, where are you at home?" "I'm in bed." "Well, first thing first, get out of bed, make your bed. I don't care if you lay back down on top of it afterward, but first thing first." And then after a while, a couple of weeks later, it turned into, "Hey, guess what? I'm on the couch," and just little steps like that. And she felt like somebody was there for her. And then we were able to get her with the group, and we were able to get her moving forward. And it started with a part-time job at a QT, and then it turned into, getting another regular job. So it was a huge thing for me, especially as a volunteer, having to dedicate that time. But for me, it saved a life. So I firmly believe that. So it made it definitely worth my time, definitely worth every single moment of the time that it took. Sometimes it might just be you listen to them and they feel like they're heard, and then they move on. Any questions or comments from anyone? We're about to move on because we're almost at that time.
All right.
Go ahead.
There's a super powerful story on the Stop One website of the gentleman that is one of the few people to survive jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And the quote that really stood out to me from that was, he said, if just one person, just one, had asked him, "Are you okay?" then he would not have attempted that. You think about how many people you come in contact with every day, talk to multiple times a day, but are we really asking, "Are you okay?"
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm glad you found that on the website, and I encourage everybody, please share the website. There's lots of powerful, stories and information. And again, as Domingo said, this was just a random person walking by. I mean, he knew it was a veteran, but we're so disconnected by, I mean, even before the pandemic, of just, you know, looking at our telephones and not looking around us, being situationally aware. And now more than ever, we as a community need to be situationally aware of when you see Facebook posts that have this kind of desperation in them, or when you see you know, when you're talking on a call or a Zoom call or something, you know, we have got to be situationally aware of the crisis, mental health crisis that are going on around us that are absolutely preventable, that can be, we can intervene. And yes, it's not convenient to be the sounding board for somebody just coming and dumping all their stuff on you. But as Domingo said, you know, he doesn't regret it one day, and I'm sure that girl doesn't regret it at all from just by being available, because people are worth it, lives are worth it, and the contribution that she's able to go on and make to her family and impact those people, it's an invaluable, incalculable. So this is our last segment, and it's about how to respond. So an important piece of this conversation is acknowledging and validating someone else's suffering. So you can try this. You can say, you're right. Sometimes life really can suck, but what's worth living for? And maybe this isn't an automatic or easy answer, but what can we come up with together? What's something that you're interested in trying that you haven't tried yet? So work together to come up with some reasons to stay for another hour, another day, another year. Though the reasons might take some time and searching, they're there. And it's important to give a real answer when we're talking with someone about their feelings, because maybe you're participating today because you've been thinking, well, what can I do to help somebody who's struggling? And that's a great question. That's why we're here. We can all be ambassadors of mental health. Talk about it, listen, ask, and speak with kindness, because people are quick to share the latest diet or exercise routines, or come on, what's your latest binge on Netflix? When it started, Tiger King. We're all quick to say that stuff, but we're not comfortable with saying how your mental health and what's mental wellness. We've got to start as a community, as a culture, to include that in the conversation. As I said, we're all quick to start talking about diet and exercise, and yet we're not taking care of our mental capacity the same way that we're focusing on our physical capacity. It's all about community and friends that come in to support healthy self-care decisions and get away from the crushing isolation. So you can start the video now, Domingo.
Okay, just give me 2 to 3 minutes. We do have a little bit of time to stay on task, but I do see Lynn speaking every once in a while. Do you have something you want to say?
Unmute yourself.
I got it. You know, this has just been a really tough few months. You know, there are days that I'm just like, it's so overwhelming, you know, and I mean, I work in, you know, with the healthcare organization, and I listen to story after story after story. And, you know, sometimes I'm just like, I can't take anymore. And is this ever going to end? You know, the mask, the not being able to see my nieces and my nephews, and, you know, those kinds of things. I live with my mom, you know, she has all the underlying circumstances. I'm her, you know, total support system. And there are days that I literally, and it's been the first time in my entire life, there have been days that I'm just like, how can I go on? How can I go on? And we do talk about I mean, I've gained about 100 pounds in the past 6 months, but, you know, we do talk about, you know, the gaining weight, no big deal. You know, you go to bed with a pint of ice cream, no big deal. But the people are scared to hear me say, I can lose it sometimes. You know, I have to walk around the block so I don't scream at my, you know, my 78-year-old, 74-year-old mom, you know, because I'm just like, So anyway, your words and your actions are important. What y'all do is important. And you made an impression on me today, and I have your website, and I am going to be in touch if I feel this overwhelming sense of how can I go on. So I just wanted you to know you made a difference in my life today.
Thank you for those words. And you know, I would say if you ever need, give us a call. You know, my thing is I'm supposed to be working with veterans and everything. I do not ever let anyone go by. So, and we can always find some, you know, a group for you or someone else that may be able to be near you or something. So just let us know what's going on, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And yeah, thank you for being so brave. Thank you for saying that.
Well, it makes you feel better to get it off your chest.
I got to put the video on or else I'm going to get emotional.
Okay, sorry.
No, we are, that is the purpose. And as Anne-Marie said earlier, you know, the story of Kevin Hines that he was talking about, if just one person had said, "Are you okay?" He would not have jumped off the bridge that day. And so we're looking to shift that narrative from the veterans, you know, 22 a day to, look, just stop one. And if you get the information that mental health resources are available and that kind of information, you might be the one that we stop. And that is enough for us. I mean, if building a website, if having this thing, if it was all just about you, Lynn, I'm okay with that. If it was all just for this day, I'm okay with that. So our last video is on how to respond.
I thought about killing myself every day for 12 years. I only tried to kill myself once. But there were many, many years where it was still an active part of my reality, and I thought about a way to escape the pain. You really do need, as a clinician, to look at suicidal thoughts and feelings and have open conversations about them. The idea that if you talk to young people about suicide, they may be more inclined to kill themselves. It's been shown actually not to be the case. When you talk with youth in an open way, suicide intentionality goes down, risky behaviors and things like that also go down.
If you can't remember specific positive life experiences when you're in a crisis, that makes it really hard to choose life. And so what we do is we ask them, you know, what's worth living for? What are your reasons for not dying? And early on, many will say, I have no reasons for living. And of course, we can say, well, that can't be true. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And what's fascinating is as you get them talking, you can see their mood elevating and they start laughing and they start smiling. Not only is there a reduction in depression, anxiety, stress, you see an increase in happiness. So, I mean, in 10 to 15 minutes, you have an immediate emotional impact on someone who came in saying, today's the worst day of my life and I think I'm going to kill myself.
So often the spaces in our society are designed to shut down that suicidal feeling. Don't be suicidal, stop that, stop it. We need to do the opposite. We need to allow people to be suicidal. And I know that sounds weird, but in a place of safety and support, not all alone. And through that, I really do believe people recover and heal. Suicide is always an option. It's not the option that I want anyone to feel like they have to pursue, but it's an option that's out there, and we can't lie about that and pretend that that's not true, because the suicide rate is showing us that people are taking this option.
So at the beginning of the clip, you hear, I thought about killing myself every day for 12 years. That's a long time to carry a burden alone. So one of the clinicians featured was Craig Bryan, the executive director of the National Center for Veteran Studies at the University of Utah. The simple engagement, he said, what are your reasons for living and what are your reasons for not dying, can actually give us a framework for engaging and not shaming. Remember that honesty opens doors. There's no shame in feeling suicidal. Suicide is an option, but it doesn't have to be the choice that you make. So let's think of 5 more hopeful solutions. When the distractions aren't working and thoughts of feel overwhelming, it takes courage, like Lynn just showed us, to be vulnerable and share that with someone else. You can also download the Not Okay app. So this app identifies 5 people, and it allows you to hit a button that will automatically send a text to 5 identified people and send your GPS location, so they'll know how to get in touch. The buddy system, it helps identify those friends that we call lifeguards. It can be a therapist, it can be a hotline, someone else to call when you can't reach your person. And as the lifeguard or the primary person, this isn't about guilting, but reminding them for reasons to stay. So the other thing about the Not Okay app, our website has a whole page devoted to apps and downloads, things that you can look into. But the Not Okay app was developed by a teenage brother whose sister was suicidal, and he wanted her to make it easy so she could just tap a button. She doesn't have to think, well, I know Brandy's at work, or Drea's probably picking up her kid from school, or oh, Domingo has everybody calling him, I can't call him. You know, those things that go through your mind that prevent you from reaching out, that takes the guesswork out. It lets people know up front, hey, I need to give Lynn a call. Hey, I need to give Domingo a call because he's not okay. And it might not be that he's in imminent danger, but it just means he needs somebody to talk to at that moment in time. The key is it's a moment in time, and it can feel absolutely overwhelming. And you cannot see anything but the pain of the immediate circumstance. So when you're able to engage in a conversation with somebody and you're able to say, hey, I'm here right now. We're going to keep you safe. We're going to keep you safe now. And we're going to talk about some things that you can do proactively, getting professional help, or, ways that you can care for yourself in the midst of caring for everybody else. This is so critical, to care for yourself. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons, one of the mitigating factors in the veteran community is because everybody is caring for everybody else, and they're not necessarily taking that moment to care for themselves. And every time that people that are exposed to suicide are 40% more likely to see that as an option. So now you do the factors. If you are experienced with 1 suicide, but now you say, well, now you've got 27. How much more likely are you to see that as an option? So our goal today here was to help you feel more confident in having a conversation with someone about suicide, and whether that's asking for help or helping someone else. So Lynn, thank you so much for participating with us today. And I'll put my email in the chat, my telephone number. Please feel free to reach out anytime. That's what we're here for. We have to be here for each other, for the community to reach out. So Domingo, I'm going to let you facilitate the discussion because we are right on time.
So, this part we're talking about how to respond. We have already mentioned several different ways on how to respond. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that, or some that they have personally used or utilized?
I do have a question because I have two teenage daughters. So I'm wondering, we hear discussions from their friends or, it just seems to be a persistent subject when you're in high school and middle school because that's such a rough time. Do you have any specific recommendations for talking to younger people, or like you mentioned, the 10-year-old girl, do you go to their parents? What should we be doing?
Well, the first thing, I mean, the Grant Halliburton Foundation in the community, they had a teenage son died by suicide, so they started the Grant Halliburton. Grant Halliburton was their son. They started a foundation specifically addressing teenage, the issues with teenagers and mental health. So they have tons of information. They have tons of chat rooms and virtual sites for parents and for teachers and people that are interacting regularly with youth on how to communicate that information successfully to teenagers. And as in the second clip where the person said, people are like, especially in the teenage community, they're like, oh, they're just trying to get attention. And it's like, yeah, but we need, as adults, we need to be giving them better coping mechanisms. If their default is to say, I'm just going to kill myself, we need to give them the tools that will give them better coping mechanisms other than just reverting always to, I'm just going to kill myself. I'm just going to kill myself. So yeah, the Grant Halliburton Foundation, and there's also Here for Texas, is also geared towards youth and towards young people in the community. And when I started building the website and getting resources and stuff, I saw I think it was on the Halliburton Foundation, they said a child that was 5 years old died by suicide. And I'm like, how does a 5-year-old that's really just been mentally cognizant maybe 2 years, I mean, if you think to go from a 3-year-old to a 5-year-old, how does that overwhelming feeling, how does that happen? And then it really brought the picture home. It's kind of like saying, how does a 5-year-old get cancer? Well, it's mental illness. And we are not addressing, we are looking at mental illness like it's that person's fault. And it's not that person's fault. There are steps you can take, just like, heart disease. Well, if I stop eating bacon, I probably won't have the cholesterol problem. But to have somebody stand over me while I'm having a heart attack and say, I told you to give up bacon, it's not helpful. It's just not. And again, when mental health and wellness comes to the forefront, and when we can start talking about it as a community, and when we can start talking about it as parents, as teachers, as influencers in the community, when people can say, hey, I've struggled, I got help, and here's where you can get help. Yeah, I might be, we think about Dak Prescott and think, oh, well, yeah, he said he got help. Well, he has resources that we don't have. There are resources out there. Metro Care Services offers resources for civilian population. There are resources to get help, but we have to be more proactive in directing people to those things and making them aware. And it's hard. It's just as hard as somebody saying, hey, you can go to the Y and work out. It's just as hard, to get me to take that initiative as it is to say, well, there's free mental health resources available. But the more that people talk about it, the more people engage with it, the more people that regularly have those conversations about, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? Take care of yourself. Then I think we're going to be further down the road, and the generation coming up is going to be further down the road because they're going to start talking about that.
And Anne Marie, I want you to remember, you know, do you remember when you first had your child and they gave you that manual and they said, here, this is how you take care of this child? And I want you to turn to chapter 14 and, you know, look, there is no manual, right? There's nothing even close to that. I know, I saw you about to let me lay into me, but you know, there isn't that. The other side of that too is that in reality, there kind of is. I would teach CPR for a long time. And one time, do you remember the two young men who had the two kids who died when one touched a power line and the other one went to go save his brother, and he stepped into the water that the power line was touching because he wanted to pull his brother out. And the problem was they were just curious about it. They saw a power line down. No one had ever told them not to do this. So they went to go check it out. And I think that also is a lot of what we have to deal with. We raise our kids trial and error most of the time, you know, and then the other kids that follow, you're going by what was done before until that doesn't work, and then you change it up. But there are others who have done this, who have, you know, there are different organizations that have studied this, that have, you know, that have looked at this. I said it earlier, everybody's an individual, so it isn't a cookie cutter type thing, but there are different things. And especially when you're dealing with a teenager that's contemplating suicide, at that moment, they're no longer a teenager, they're no longer an adult, they are a human being that needs that attention. Whatever it is is happening at that moment, they need something. And at that point, it's our job to find out what it is that they need and see if we can get it for them. Whether it's just acknowledgement that they are a person, whether it's they actually need some mental health, whatever it is, that's our job to figure out what it is. Does that make sense? And the other side of that too is, you know, there's so many conflicting things, especially with teenagers and especially even the preteens. You know, we have to make sure that we are, we have to make sure that we're talking to them, but then we also have to make sure that we are gaining their trust so that they will listen to us, so that they will, you know, count us as someone who actually cares about them. And sometimes that includes letting them know, I can't hold this. I have to let your parents know, or I have to let someone know that you need this help. You know, most of the times, if you're able to tell them that, you know, you're holding to your word. You're saying, look, I can't hold this to you. And they may say, no, don't do that. No, you know, this. But when you do, you're actually doing and saying what you're doing. You're saying and doing exactly what you're saying you're doing. So that holds the trust value even more sometimes. Sometimes it provides that stability. So everybody's different, including the teens. I hope that helps. I don't know.
Yeah,
okay, so now we're.
The other side is take it seriously. I mean, I told my son, you know, because he was like, well, you know, here's part of the issue, his parents, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, hey, regardless, the reasons are not relevant. The reasons are you've got to keep that child safe, whatever that looks like. And by being open and by taking it seriously and by showing them that you're taking it seriously and not dismissing it and not shaming them or not punishing them, which, you know, is a big thing with kids. They're all afraid they're going to get punished. You know, oh, well, don't tell my parents because then they'll take my phone away, or then they'll take this away, or then they'll take that away. You know, it's just like, no, I'm taking this seriously because this is very serious. And I love you as, you know, if it's your child, of course, but if it's someone else, I love you as a person. You are a person of value. You are a person that's going to contribute. You are a person that the world needs. And this is a serious subject. So here's how we're going to work on this together, especially for kids. Here's the conversations that we're going to have. I'm going to ask you probably more than you want to know. Hey, I'm just checking in. How you doing? And it doesn't have to be this like, are you okay? Are you thinking about suicide today? What's the deal? You know, just, I mean, seriously, because trust me, as a parent, I kind of can get in my kids' face, and they're like, "Yeah, settle on down." But these are unprecedented times in so many levels. If one person can stop one person, it will be a completely different community that we're living in. It'll be a different community of concern. It'll be a different community for equality and justice for all. It'll be a different community when we can look at one another and say, I'm concerned about you. Let's have a talk. Hey, what's going on? Let's chat. How are you doing? How are you taking care of yourself? And that's how the statistics change. That's how cultures change. That's how the world changes. One person talking to one person.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of add this as well, because we're talking about how to respond. And so in full transparency, just a few years ago, because we're talking about parents and kids, it was probably about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had a knock at the door. And of course we were alarmed, because at that time of morning, you're thinking like, what's going on? Because all the kids are in the house, right? So something has happened somewhere. And so as we opened the door, it was the police at our door. And they said that they were coming in for like a welfare check. And of course, you know, we're waking up, we're dazed, and we're trying to figure out like, why it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And they said, well, we received a call. Do you have a son? And we said, yes. They said, we received a call from a friend that he may be experiencing some angst right now. And so we're like, no, he's in his room asleep. And so we're like, so of course, my husband stayed at the door. He invited them in. I went to the bedroom, and he was laying in the bed and with the lights on, and the fan was just turning. And so I asked, hey, what's going on? We got the police at the door, and not realizing, you know, as they came in, and I got him to come out of his room, that he had been in a chat room with his friends, or on a group text with his friends, had experienced something in this relationship that he was in, and, you know, basically revealed to them how he was feeling in that moment. And because they're close and they know not to take that for granted when someone says that, one of the friends who basically lives in the north, and I don't mean the north of Texas, I mean that lives like in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, who was on the chat, called the police, who contacted the police here, and they showed up at my door. So I wanted to bring that, you know, up today, because even as parents, you know, there's sometimes that we will not catch certain things, or if it's happening in that moment, sometimes we can be paralyzed by something, because I know all the right things to say, but in the moment, what was different is that was my child. It wasn't, it hit differently is what I'm saying. And so in that initial moment, I was not paralyzed that the police was at the door, not even thinking someone called, but at the fact that, whoa, while I was asleep, I could have lost my child. And so what I learned to do, even with my daughter and still with my son, is I get to know their friends as best as I can. And I have conversations when I love to invite them over, and they can't even figure it out yet. But I love to invite them over and then just haphazardly engage them in these kind of conversations to see how close they are, what they tell one, who's connected to who, and then bring up these conversations about, you know, if you guys are ever in need, if you don't come, you don't go to your parents or whatever, there's these places you can go, these people you can call, these things you can do. So I would say that's what helped me to be able to respond in situations that are maybe too close to me, like my kids, right? Another thing is I wanted to bring it back to the Kevin Hines video, because he has since then come back and also made amends about what he said in regards to if one person had asked him if he was okay. Because in the video, he talks about this tourist. He uses this accent as if this is a tourist, from a different country, maybe Asia. And he talks about that she, says something, but not in the way that he was expecting to say it. And so I say we need to be able to understand and give each other grace, because sometimes we don't know in what language to speak or what words to speak to say it. But when we get this kind of training and this kind of understanding, we can help someone. It helps us to even have these conversations with someone who's not comfortable, but also to recognize that even times we have our own biases. Depending on where you fall on the spectrum of what you believe, you may have a bias about suicide and not want to discuss it because you just think it's just all wrong. But we have to understand that even for those that are experiencing suicidal ideation, that is not what we do not consider them being selfish, that they've looked for ways to end what the pain that they're going through. And this is the decision that they've come to, and not that they've come to it easy. It's at that point maybe the feeling of the most relief that they will get to be able to escape what it is that they're feeling in that moment. And so keeping our minds open, because we have distraction all around us, even within our homes, with all of our tech and social media and different things that we're on. But really, really considering how to respond in some different ways to find opportunities to have conversations with people, with our kids, or with, other loved ones as well.
Yeah. And on our website, that brings up a good point. Thank you for sharing that, Drea. On the website, there's a whole page of COVID-19 resources that talks about that are from NAMI, the National Organization for Mental Health that say, here's how to talk to a child about the pandemic. Here's how to talk to a child about the anxiety they're feeling. Here's how to talk to, a loved one. Here's how to talk to there's caregiver resources out there that, you can certainly avail yourself of during that time. And I think that as Drea was pointing out, it's a moment in time. That moment in time, I think it was Mark Twain that said, a second looking at a pretty girl feels like an eternity, or feels like, a second. But a second on a hot stove, it's just the difference in the experience can be absolutely overwhelming. And to take that, sometimes you are just not capable of doing it on your own, and you need to, and it's good to know it's okay not to be able to handle whatever that is on your own at that given point in time, because it is a given point in time. And one of the S word clips, we didn't show it today. There's a suicide survivor that says, I survived an attempt. I will never tell you it's going to get better, because at that moment in my life, I was done. I thought this is never going to change. And he said, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to minimize your issue, but I'm going to tell you I was wrong, because I am okay now. And, it's a process. Kevin Hines attempted suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge when he was 19 years old. He's a grown man, well into adulthood, and he still, he suffers from bipolar disorder, and it's still an issue, just like heart disease or cancer or any other medical issue. This is a medical issue. And again, when you're, just like you teach people, that have heart disease in their family, you teach them, here's the things that you can eat, here's the way that you exercise. Those things and those tools to be taught into the community in a more proactive way will help the community and will help young people. It's suicide remains is like I think it's the first leading cause of death in 17 to 24-year-olds. And the city of Dallas, I had some statistics on the city of Dallas youth suicides rose 79% in 1 year. If you said, murders rose 79%, people would be outrageous. There would be an outcry. And because we're not comfortable with talking about mental health, because we're not comfortable with the way that it's dealt with, because there's still that societal shame that's attached to it, you're seeing an increase, and you're not seeing a proactive input into the community to rectify the situation. So
what was the ratio for murder to suicide?
Twice as many suicides as murders.
For every murder there's like 1.7 suicides or something.
Yeah.
So every time you see a statistic out there, or even the news say, however many murders that day, double that.
Yeah,
how many
and that's
suicides.
how many people are dying by their own hand. And so, of course, this being a veteran platform, more veterans die in 1 year by their own hand than have died in 19 years of combat. That's unacceptable.
Before we run out of time, because we are still good on time, for another 5 minutes. I just want to add on to what Drea was saying. What she was saying, not only is she dealing with her own sphere that she can influence, but she's also dealing with the sphere of her kids. She's not necessarily in their inner sphere, but she's in their outer sphere. She's kind of making herself that cool mom, so that if something does happen, and they're all contemplating something, hopefully one of those kids won't be afraid to call her, to say, hey, this is going on and I don't think it's right, and it doesn't necessarily have to be her child. It can be one of the other children or something. And I think that's a lot of what we need to do, is look at our sphere that we can influence, or that has influence on us, and see what we can gain from that. And there's so many different ways you can gain knowledge, especially nowadays. One of them, Charlene keeps talking about the website and things like that. One of the best ways is to dive deep, go into some of these classes that do take some time. I will tell you, one of the best classes I have ever taken is the assist. That right there taught me so much about actually acknowledging and acknowledging suicide is a thing. Acknowledging that someone wants to do it, and not, the most important thing was not fighting them against it, but actually verifying and saying, this is something going on with you. It is a problem. Let's talk about it. Let's, tell me, talk to me. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to listen to you. And, that I learned so much from that one. But there's mental health first aid. There's, what's some other ones that are out there? There's a ton of them.
CPR.
Question, persuade, response.
Yeah. Ask.
ASK.
And we have had those, we have had the opportunity to record some of those, so you can watch them online, you can watch them virtually. There are also, because of this unique situation we find ourselves in these days, there's also tons of support groups that, let's say before, you might have been like, oh, I can't go into a support group and be the outsider, and everybody already knows this. Hey, now support groups are virtual, and it's not such a strange thing, to hop on a Zoom and you can turn off your videos. You don't have to, you can mute yourself, and you can just listen to where you are getting that additional communal support to where you know that you're not by yourself in feeling these ways. And, you know, that, again, being able to talk about it, being able to say, you're not alone, I'm here with you. And when you see that somebody's struggling in any kind of a circumstance, you know, people are quick to say, oh, well, do you need a workout partner? I'll go work out with you. Or do you need a accountability person? Yeah, I'll tell you everything I've eaten today, and you can tell me everything you've eaten today. And, you know, we can be accountable to each other that way. But we get this, you know, discomfort when it's talking about, hey, how are you taking care of yourself? You know, I'm sure Domingo has gotten quite irritated with me saying, hey, how are you taking care of yourself, buddy? Have you done anything creative? Have you?
I got a dog. I'm good.
Yeah. Well,
I do want to say, you know, on that whole self-care, you know, make sure that you are taking care of yourself. You know, we do so much for other people that sometimes we don't even, you know, think about ourselves, or we're like, you know, I'll do that this weekend or do something else. I'm a firm believer that suicide is a complete lack of hope. The whole reason that someone attempts or dies by suicide is because of a complete lack of hope, which led me to where I'm at. One of our things as MVPN is hope, trust, and camaraderie. And, you know, those are our whole things. And here's the thing, you know, it's all about giving that person something else that they feel like they're lacking. And sometimes, you know, it's when you don't see a future, why keep going? You know, so sometimes it comes down to, well, let's see about getting you a future. Let's see what we can do to help you with that future. And like I said, it's not, you know, I'm not expecting you to be the professional. You know, I'm not expecting you to be the end all be all, but for sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, I like those shoes, you know, look really good in those. And, you know, and sometimes it's, you know, hey, you're really cool. You know, I like you. Sometimes that's what it takes. And at those times, we never even know. I've had so many people that have said, thank you for what you did here and this and that. I'm like, dude, I don't even remember that. They're like, well, I do. That's all that matters, you know? Okay, we're right at the end of our review chat. So we have 5 minutes roughly before we are completely done with this. Is there anything anybody wants to say, or anything anyone wants to put in the chat, or anything that we put in for the resources or anything else?
I did add the files to the chat box, so you can download it, and you can also save you can download those resources, but they are also available on our website. I did post the website on in the chat. It's stop1.info. And we just want to thank everybody for participating in this portion of Freedom Days events. We hope our goals were met in getting you to a place where you're more comfortable with speaking to someone about suicide, as well as providing you with resources that are in the community that you can readily share and access before a crisis has occurred. So for those of you who joined late, I'm going to give you the 2 crisis line numbers again. The National Suicide Hotline is 800.
Can you put it in the chat?
Oh yeah, sure.
Put it in the chat real quick. Okay, and you can save the chat if you look at the chat where you would be typing in. There's 3 little dots. If you click those 3 little dots, you can hit Save Chat, and it will download that chat. Good luck finding where that download is, but it'll be somewhere on your computer. Okay, I saw Maggie wanted to say something.
Oh, it may take long. I mean, you know, I always want to say something, but
we got 4.5 minutes, so you're good.
So
somebody's going to turn us in.
So So one of the things, I've been trying to do is talk about, use art as a starting point to talk about those mental health, issues. And I'm wondering, for you guys who are, really down in the trenches, when we have those high publicity suicides like Robin Williams or Anthony Bourdain, that kind of stuff, do you think that for some people that almost gives them permission, that makes it okay? How do we combat that? If it, do you know what I mean? I mean, are people more inclined to take their lives immediately following something like that than they are during just a normal time? I mean, I know, Mingo, you said there's no hope. So if they're feeling hopeless, they see somebody that they admire and respect, and that looks like a perfectly mentally healthy person, seems to have it all. So can you talk about that a little bit for 3.5?
Yeah, that's the contagion effect. The National Association for Suicide Prevention, as well as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, they both have media guidelines on how to report about suicide, as well as how the media portrays suicidal reporting. So, for instance, the Netflix series 13 Reasons is about a teenage suicide, and they got slammed for the portrayal of mental illness in the teenage population. So, yeah, those guidelines are out there. That contagion effect of when you have a high-profile suicide, they see clusters, and it certainly happens in school districts where you have one suicide and then you have 3 or 4 more suicides within that. So they're I mean, in Plano, I think they had 5 suicides within a 3-month period. One of the Texas Suicide Prevention Council's sons was part of that cluster of suicides. So yeah, it becomes very critical for the community around people to respond and to be watching. Like if you have a friend, let's say when Kate Spade died, that knew something, that can also be an entry point for you to have that conversation, and for you to have, wow, who would have thought somebody with such access to success, to resources, to money, to, there was nothing stopping them except hopelessness was stopping them. And so when we're all paying attention and recognize that sense of hopelessness, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter how much experience you have, it doesn't matter how much, the world is your oyster, like Anthony Bourdain. It's like a heart attack. It'll kill you if people around you are not watchful and mindful. But if Dak Prescott, and I'm on Dak Prescott today, but if he gets criticized for talking about depression or talking about seeking help for depression, then come on, where are we? We wouldn't, criticize somebody for starting to work out at the gym because they got diagnosed with heart disease. And yet when we're, addressing mental health and mental illness, we still want to shame people. It's still a culturally unacceptable because it appears as a weakness. And, if you're not in control of your mind, that's a weakness. So, be aware of the signs, use those high profile events or the pandemic. It's a good, anytime that circumstances provide you with an entry point into having a difficult conversation, take it. This is a unique time in history that we all have an entry point to where we can say to one another, hey, how's life going? Where before we wouldn't even think to ask that. Now we have an entry point to where we can say, hey, Lynn, you work in the healthcare field. How's it going? And just having a connection on that level where hey, they're not going to shame me if I say, frankly, I'm not doing okay. I'm not doing okay today. And you can say, well, hey, well, what can we do to get you to a point where you're feeling better? So please, please, please download the warning signs. Be aware of the warning signs. Take this unique time in history to be more engaged with other people. Take this unique time in history to be asking one another, hey, are you okay? How you doing? I'm here for you. Because we really can change the demographic. We really can change the statistics when we're working together. So thank you all for participating. We appreciate you. I posted my email, my telephone number, and our website. You can always reach us through the website. If you have any questions, we're here to make the connections. We're here to help you navigate these strange times and strange circumstances in the history of our world. So have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Charlene and Domingo, so much for this session. I feel like we could, keep going for hours talking about the different aspects of that. And thank you for all the participants. Thank you for your honesty and your bravery today. We really appreciate it. I don't think any of us will leave this session the same as when we started. I do have a couple closing remarks from CFT for Business that they'd like me to run through. So I want to thank you guys for being part of Freedom Day. I need to thank our sponsors. That's BioWorld Merchandising, the Fallen Family Fund, Platinum IDS, RHSB, SFMG, Wealth Advisors, the Swan Smith Family Fund, and Texadia Systems. And then CFT has 3 reminders for all of us. First, if you have not completed your census, please do that now. The deadline is September the 30th, and Texas is only at a almost 73% completion percentage. So that affects our representation in Washington, funding for schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. So please do that. Second, make sure you vote on Tuesday, November 3rd. The deadline to register to vote by mail and in person is October the 5th. The deadline to request the ballot by mail is Friday, October 3rd. Early voting begins October 13th and ends October 30th. And you can go to votetexas.gov for all the details on that. And also don't forget, as Dave mentioned this morning in the opening, that North Texas Giving Day is next week on the 17th. Early giving is open. You can schedule your gifts. You can go to northtexasgivingday.org to do that. And lastly, join us for our virtual dance party at 5 p.m. today in the Liberty Room. And please feel free to hop into any of the education breaks today and the Lunch and Learn. I think you should have an email that has all the links for those schedules. So thank you guys again. Drea, thank you for being our steering team committee host as well.
And I put in the chat link the next place you can go and continue on being a part of Freedom Day is our break room, Liberty. The link is in the chat, so you can use that link to go into the next room.
Great.
And Drea,
Domingo's coming after it. 12. Yeah, Domingo's got another class, so be sure to stay tuned.
12:45.
Nice.
Brandy's the host again. So.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
So you can stop the recording.